He expected her to be struggling since he left her penniless, but stood speechless as Forbes' youngest self-made billionaire opened her mansion gates while triplets played with diamond tiaras. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Chicago shivered under a merciless snowstorm as Olivia Johnson sat on the edge of the marble bathtub in the penthouse bathroom, her trembling hands holding the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines stared back at her, unmistakable and life-changing. She was pregnant. At 24, with a brilliant MIT degree and a promising career as a programmer in Chicago's emerging tech scene, pregnancy wasn't in her immediate plans. Yet here she was, facing a future suddenly thrown into beautiful uncertainty. Through the panoramic windows, snow fell in thick flakes over Lake Michigan, the white sky merging with the frozen water in a blank canvas. Olivia's reflection in the bathroom mirror showed wide eyes filled not with fear over the unexpected pregnancy, but with anticipation of Jackson Reynolds' reaction. Jackson, CEO of Reynolds Enterprises, heir to a tech investment empire, and her boyfriend of 2 years. The penthouse they shared, with its sweeping lake views and minimalist luxury furniture, represented more his success than their shared home. He had been in San Francisco for the past week, closing deals and networking with investors ahead of his company's planned IPO. Olivia stood up, tucking the test into her pocket. She would tell him tonight when he returned. Her hand drifted to her still flat stomach, a smile playing on her lips despite her anxiety. They would need to adapt their plans, certainly, but they could make this work. With her programming skills and his business acumen, they could build something magnificent together, both professionally and as a family. She spent the afternoon transforming the apartment for his return. Fresh-cut tulips brightened the dining table. She arranged them in the crystal vase he'd brought back from a business trip to Amsterdam. The kitchen filled with aromas of his favorite bourbon-glazed salmon. She wore the navy blue dress he liked, her natural curls framing her face in the way he'd once called adorably bohemian when they first met at a tech conference. Planning how to share the news occupied her thoughts as she moved through the penthouse. Should she blurt it out immediately or wait until after dinner? Should she present it as exciting news or a challenge they would overcome together? She rehearsed different approaches, whispering them to herself while arranging throw pillows he'd never cared about, but she insisted made the place feel more like home. "We're going to have a baby," she practiced, trying to sound confident and joyful. "I've got some unexpected but wonderful news," she tried again, wondering if that framing would work better. The sound of the elevator's private code being entered sent her heart racing. She smoothed her dress, took a deep breath, and moved toward the entryway. Jackson strode in, dropping his leather briefcase unceremoniously on the Italian marble floor. His tailored suit was slightly rumpled, his normally perfect hair disheveled. He didn't greet her with a kiss or even look at her properly. "Flight delayed twice. Incompetent airline," he muttered, heading straight for the bar cart. "I need a drink." Olivia's carefully prepared greeting died on her lips. She followed him to the living room, watching as he poured himself a generous whiskey. "Rough trip?" she asked gently. "The San Francisco deals are solid, but the board is breathing down my neck about the IPO timeline." He took a long sip, staring out at the snow-covered city. "We need to accelerate everything." "I made your favorite dinner," she offered. "Bourbon-glazed salmon." He nodded absently, his mind clearly still at work. "I'll eat later. Need to unwind first." Olivia stood awkwardly in the center of the room she had spent hours preparing. The romantic dinner, the flowers, the dress, all seemed suddenly juvenile and misplaced against his corporate exhaustion. "I have something to tell you," she said, deciding that waiting would only prolong her anxiety. "Can it wait? I've had back-to-back meetings for 72 hours. "I'm pregnant," she announced, the words hanging in the air between them. The silence that followed was deafening. Jackson didn't turn from the window. His shoulders stiffened slightly, the only indication he'd heard her at all. He took another sip of whiskey, swirling the amber liquid in his crystal tumbler. "You're sure?" he finally asked, his voice unnervingly calm. "Yes. Took the test today." Another painful silence stretched between them. When he finally turned to face her, his expression was completely unreadable. "Are you sure it's mine?" he asked coldly. The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. She took a step back, her hand automatically going to her stomach in a protective gesture. "How can you even ask that?" Her voice quivered with hurt and indignation. "It's a reasonable question." His tone remained detached, analytical, the same voice he used when evaluating potential investments. "We've used protection consistently." "Protection fails sometimes, Jackson. You know that." She struggled to keep her voice steady. "I've never been with anyone else since we've been together. This baby is yours." He emptied his glass in one swift motion. "This is incredibly poor timing." "Timing? That's your concern?" The hurt was giving way to anger now. "I'm carrying your child and you're worried about timing?" "I have an IPO in 3 months, Olivia," he snapped, his calculated calm cracking. "My board is finally taking me seriously as CEO, not just as the founder's son. The investor roadshow starts next month. Do you have any idea what's at stake?" "Our family is at stake," she countered. "This changes things, yes, but we can adjust our plans." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Our family? Is that what you think this is?" The cruelly casual way he said it froze Olivia in place. "We've been together for 2 years, living together for 1. What else would you call it? A convenient arrangement." He poured another whiskey. "A mutually beneficial situation." "Arrangement?" The word tasted like poison on her tongue. "Is that all I am to you? An arrangement?" Jackson sighed with theatrical patience. "Do you think I've been envisioning white picket fences? Marriage? The CEO of Reynolds Enterprises pushing a stroller through Lincoln Park?" "I thought you loved me," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "I enjoy your company, Olivia. You're intelligent, beautiful, sexually compatible." He spoke as if listing features on a product spec sheet. "But you've always been temporary. Someone interesting to pass the time with while I build my personal brand." Each word sliced deeper than the last. Olivia felt her world tilting on its axis. "Temporary? We share a home. I pay for this penthouse. You contribute what you can from your startup salary, which we both know is symbolic at best." His gaze swept over her dismissively. A talented programmer from humble beginnings? It made for a good story in business magazines. The diversity angle played well with progressive investors. But a single mother? That doesn't align with the image I need to project right now. "Single mother?" she repeated, the implication dawning with horrifying clarity. "You're not planning to be involved?" "Be realistic, Olivia." Jackson's voice hardened. "I'm building an empire. The next major tech investment firm. I can't present a pregnant black girlfriend to my investors 3 months before going public." "Girlfriend?" The word felt like a demotion after what they'd shared. "I thought we were more than that after 2 years." He laughed without humor. "You've always been a romantic. It's charming in its way. Unrealistic, but charming." Tears burned behind Olivia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "So what do you suggest?" His expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained cold. "There are options. Discreet clinics. I'll handle the arrangements, the cost. No one needs to know." "You want me to terminate this pregnancy?" Her hand pressed against her stomach. "Just erase it like a failed line of code?" "It's the logical solution." He spoke with the same confidence he used in boardrooms. "You're 24. Your career is just starting. We can revisit the possibility of children in the future when the timing is better." "When the timing is better for you, you mean?" "For both of us," he insisted. "This isn't personal. It's practical." The next week brought another shock. During her first prenatal appointment, which she attended alone after Jackson claimed a scheduling conflict, the ultrasound technician frowned, adjusted the wand, then called for the doctor. "Ms. Johnson," the doctor said, pointing to the screen, "you're carrying triplets." 3 distinct heartbeats pulsed on the monitor, 3 tiny lives growing inside her. Olivia stared in wonder and terror, her mind racing to process the implications. That night, she showed Jackson the ultrasound pictures. He took one look and set them face down on the kitchen counter. "This is impossible," he declared, as if rejecting a flawed business proposal. "You need to resolve this." "Resolve this? I'm 12 weeks pregnant, Jackson. These are our children. They're not our anything." His voice was ice. "I've been clear about my position." "3 babies," she said, still processing it herself. "We're having 3 babies." "No, we're not." He emphasized each word. "You don't understand what you're asking. Look at you. Intelligent, yes, but without refinement, without the right connections. No pedigree. You'd never fit into my world long term. I was willing to overlook it for a temporary relationship, but this changes everything." "Pedigree?" The word burned like acid. "I'm not a show dog, Jackson. I'm a human being carrying your children. Children I never agreed to have." He straightened his tie, a gesture she'd once found endearing but now seemed like a physical barrier he was placing between them. "I have a board meeting in the morning. I need to get some sleep." He walked away, leaving her standing alone in the kitchen, the ultrasound pictures lying discarded like unwanted receipts. The following morning, Olivia woke to find her suitcases in the hallway outside the penthouse door. The private elevator code had been changed. Her key no longer worked in the lock. When she finally reached Jackson by phone, his response was ruthless. "You're an investment I've decided to cut, Olivia. Inadequate return potential. If you insist on having these babies, you'll do it alone. There's no place for you or them in my life." His final banking transfer arrived minutes later, $2,000 with a message that read, "To resolve the problem. Do not contact me again." The months that followed were a nightmare of survival. With a high-risk pregnancy carrying triplets, Olivia was forced to leave her job at the small startup where she worked. She slept in shelters until her growing belly made the other women suspicious of favoritism from staff. She found a tiny room she could rent with her dwindling savings. She sent out resume after resume, only to be rejected when her pregnancy became visible during interviews. One night, sitting in her borrowed room, watching snow fall while eating instant ramen, Olivia cried for Jackson for the last time. "I was just an asset to him," she whispered, caressing her growing belly. "But you 3 will be my fortune." The next morning, she woke with a clarity that never abandoned her again. She opened her second-hand laptop and began coding. The algorithm she'd been working on in her spare hours, a new approach to adaptive artificial intelligence, would become her ticket to independence. During the final months of pregnancy, between state-subsidized medical appointments and night shifts answering phones, Olivia refined her code. When contractions began, 2 months earlier than expected, she had just received an email expressing interest from a small angel investor. In a public hospital room, with no one holding her hand, Olivia gave birth to Destiny, Zora, and Maya, 3 tiny but fighting girls. As nurses placed them in incubators, she made a silent promise. "One day I'll prove he was wrong about everything. About me, about you, about what we're capable of achieving." As she drifted into exhausted sleep, Olivia couldn't possibly imagine that 12 years later, she would be commanding an $18 billion empire, while the man who discarded her would be desperately seeking her attention. Olivia stood on the sidewalk, the frigid Chicago wind cutting through her inadequate coat, watching snowflakes land on her luggage. Her tears had stopped, frozen somewhere between shock and survival instinct. $2,000. That's what 12 weeks of pregnancy with his children were worth to Jackson Reynolds. The realization settled in her chest like ice. She was entirely alone. That night, Olivia found herself in a line outside a women's shelter, the January temperature dropping below zero. Her fingers clutched her MIT diploma, sealed in a plastic folder, the one possession she refused to leave behind. The shelter coordinator, a weary woman with kind eyes, looked over her intake form. "Pregnant?" she asked, noticing Olivia's hand resting protectively over her stomach. "Yes, triplets." The coordinator's eyebrows rose. "Father in the picture?" "No," Olivia replied, the words still raw in her throat. "Any family nearby? Friends who could take you in?" Olivia shook her head. Her parents had died in a car accident during her sophomore year at MIT. Her few friends in Chicago were mostly work acquaintances, none close enough to impose upon with her situation. "We'll find you a bed tonight," the coordinator said gently. "But I should warn you, we have a 2-week maximum stay. High-risk pregnancies like yours are difficult to accommodate long-term." That night, Olivia slept on a narrow cot in a room with 7 other women, her suitcases locked in a storage closet. The sounds of quiet crying and occasional arguments filtered through the thin walls. She curled onto her side, hand protectively covering her belly, whispering silent promises to the 3 lives growing inside her. The next morning, she sat in the shelter's common area, laptop balanced precariously on her knees, searching job listings while sipping lukewarm tea. Her phone buzzed with a text from her former team leader at the startup. "Heard what happened. Reynolds is an asshole. Company can't afford to keep your position open with the pregnancy risks, but I'll be a reference. Good luck, Liv." Olivia swallowed hard and returned to the job listings. With a degree from MIT and 3 years of solid programming experience, she should have been a sought-after candidate. But the economy was tight, and tech companies were laying off, not hiring. By the end of her 2 weeks at the shelter, Olivia had secured exactly 1 in-person interview at a mid-sized data management firm. She spent half of Jackson's parting gift on a simple black maternity dress and basic makeup, determined to look professional despite her circumstances. The interview started promisingly. The technical questions were straightforward for someone with her background, and the hiring manager seemed impressed by her MIT credentials. "Your algorithm experience is exactly what we're looking for," he said, making notes. "When could you start?" "Immediately," Olivia answered, hope rising in her chest. Then his eyes dropped to her midsection, which the loose dress couldn't entirely conceal. "And you're expecting?" "Yes, my due date is in early July." She decided not to mention the triplets yet. "I see." His tone cooled noticeably. "And would you need immediate health benefits? Our policy has a 90-day waiting period." "That would be challenging." Olivia shifted uncomfortably. "My situation is somewhat complex." By the time she left the building, the rejection was already forming in her inbox. "While your qualifications are impressive, we've decided to pursue candidates whose current circumstances better align with our immediate needs." February brought more rejections, each more demoralizing than the last. Olivia found a single room for rent in a dilapidated building on the south side, $500 monthly with shared bathroom facilities down the hall. The landlady, Mrs. Guzman, asked few questions and accepted cash. No drugs, no men, no loud music were her only rules, delivered while eyeing Olivia's growing belly with neither judgment nor sympathy. The room held a sagging twin bed, a wobbly desk assembled from crates, and a mini refrigerator that hummed aggressively. Traffic noise from the elevated train nearby was constant, and the shared bathroom was often occupied when morning sickness struck. Olivia established a routine born of necessity. Mornings were for prenatal vitamins with whatever breakfast she could stomach, followed by job applications and coding practice. Afternoons she attended free community health clinics, waiting for hours in crowded rooms with outdated magazines and flickering fluorescent lights. At night, when her back ached too much for sleep, she worked on her personal project, the adaptive AI algorithm she'd been developing conceptually for years. In March, her funds dwindling dangerously, Olivia found work cleaning office buildings overnight. The company asked no questions about her pregnancy. They needed bodies willing to work for minimum wage between midnight and 5 a.m. The first night, dressed in an ill-fitting uniform, Olivia scrubbed toilets in a glass tower downtown, her rubber gloves leaking cold water onto her chapped hands. The chemical smell made her nauseous, but she worked methodically, thinking of the modest paycheck that would buy another week of food and shelter. On her break, sitting alone in a janitorial closet eating a peanut butter sandwich, she allowed herself one brief fantasy of Jackson seeing her now, pregnant with his children, cleaning toilet bowls while he slept in their penthouse with its lake view and imported sheets. "No," she whispered fiercely to herself, "he doesn't get to occupy space in my mind anymore." By April, Olivia's belly had grown enough that bending to clean was becoming impossible. Her supervisor, noticing her struggle, moved her to a night receptionist position at a 24-hour business center, answering phones, sorting mail, and monitoring security cameras. The pay was the same, but she could sit and occasionally use the office computers when no one was watching. During these stolen moments, usually between 3 and 4 in the morning when the phones never rang, Olivia refined her algorithm. The concept had come to her during a machine learning course at MIT, a self-adapting system that could learn from failed security breaches in real time, creating instantaneous defenses against similar future attacks. One night, as dawn approached, Olivia's computer screen blurred before her exhausted eyes. She'd been working on a particularly complex subroutine, fueled by nothing but determination and a vending machine granola bar. Her swollen ankles throbbed, and one of the babies, she was beginning to distinguish their movements, was performing what felt like somersaults against her ribs. "Just a little longer," she murmured, massaging her belly. "Mommy's building something important." At her next prenatal appointment, the doctor, a harried resident at the public hospital, frowned at her blood pressure readings. "Ms. Johnson, you're showing signs of preeclampsia. Are you getting adequate rest? Avoiding stress?" Olivia almost laughed. Rest and stress avoidance were luxuries as foreign to her as the penthouse she'd left behind. "I'm doing my best," she answered quietly. "You need to understand," the doctor continued, glancing at her chart. "Carrying triplets is extremely high risk even under ideal conditions. Your body is under tremendous strain. Without proper support and rest, you're risking your health and theirs." Later that evening, back in her room, Olivia stared at the ceiling, counting the water stains while one hand absent-mindedly stroked her belly. The doctor's words echoed in her mind, mingling with Jackson's dismissal. "You're an investment I've decided to cut. Inadequate return potential." "He was wrong," she whispered to her unborn daughters. "About me. About us. We are not a bad investment." The next morning, shuffling past the communal kitchen, Olivia noticed a television broadcasting financial news. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Reynolds Enterprises IPO exceeds expectations. Shares up 40% on first day." The camera cut to Jackson, immaculate in a tailored suit, raising a champagne flute among applauding investors. "Today marks the beginning of a new era in tech investment," he was saying, his voice smooth as polished marble. "Reynolds Enterprises represents innovation, foresight, and exclusivity in an overcrowded marketplace." Olivia stood frozen, her hand unconsciously cradling her belly where his children grew. Her MIT sweatshirt, now stretched tight across her stomach, was fraying at the cuffs. Her leggings had a small tear at the knee. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, unwashed for 2 days because the bathroom had been occupied during her only free hours. The contrast between them was stark enough to make her physically ill. That evening, trudging home through spring snow, Olivia passed a high-end baby boutique. The window display featured a trio of matching cribs with delicate mobiles dangling above them, $900 each, according to the tasteful price tag. Next to them sat a stroller designed for triplets, its price equivalent to 2 months of her current income. Inside her pocket, her phone vibrated with an automated rejection from yet another job application. Back in her room, Olivia opened a second-hand box containing 3 tiny bodysuits purchased from a church thrift store. They were mismatched, one yellow, one green, one with faded cartoon characters, but clean and intact. She laid them carefully on her bed, arranging them side by side. "You'll have everything one day," she promised, her voice stronger than it had been in months. Everything and more. That night she worked on her algorithm until her ancient laptop overheated and crashed, losing 3 hours of unsaved work. The frustration that welled up inside her threatened to spill over into despair, but she forced it back, restarting the system with shaking hands. "Begin again," she told herself. "That's all we can do." May arrived with unseasonable warmth and increasing physical discomfort. Olivia's ankles swelled so severely that she could no longer fit into her only pair of shoes, forcing her to spend $20 precious on oversized sandals. The night reception job became harder to manage as bathroom breaks grew more frequent and urgent. Her supervisor's initial sympathy was wearing thin. One morning, returning to her room after work, Olivia caught her reflection in a cracked hallway mirror. Her face was gaunt despite her swollen belly, dark circles prominent under her eyes. For a moment she hardly recognized herself. Then something shifted in her gaze, a hardening, a clarity. Back in her room, Olivia stood before the small mirror above her sink, really looking at herself for the first time in months. "He was wrong," she said aloud, her voice steady. "You are not without value. You are not a bad investment. You are not temporary." She placed both hands on her rounded belly, feeling the movement of her daughters. "We are going to show them all exactly what we're worth." The dawn light filtered through her thin curtains, illuminating her face with a golden glow. In that moment, something crystallized within her, a determination that would one day transform the algorithm on her cheap laptop into the most valuable artificial intelligence system on the planet, forever changing the balance of power between herself and the man who had abandoned her. The cramping started suddenly, waking Olivia from a fitful sleep on a Tuesday morning in early June. 2 months before her due date, the pain radiated across her lower back with an intensity that left her gasping. She fumbled for her phone in the darkness, checking the time. 4:17 a.m. "Not now," she whispered, pressing her palm against her swollen belly. "Please, not yet." Another contraction seized her, stronger than the first. Olivia struggled to her feet, counting seconds through gritted teeth. When the pain subsided, she dressed quickly, stuffing her hospital paperwork and meager overnight essentials into a backpack. The hallway bathroom was mercifully empty as she splashed cold water on her face, catching her reflection in the spotted mirror, pale, frightened, alone. Outside, the pre-dawn streets were deserted. Olivia walked 3 blocks to the bus stop, pausing twice for contractions that bent her double. The city was awakening around her, delivery trucks rumbling past, early shift workers trudging to train stations, sprinklers hissing on small patches of municipal grass. When the bus finally arrived, the driver eyed her warily. "You okay, miss? Hospital's the next stop if you need it." "Thank you," Olivia managed, lowering herself carefully onto a seat. By the time she reached Cook County Hospital's emergency entrance, the contractions were coming every 7 minutes. The reception area buzzed with fluorescent efficiency. Crying children, elderly patients in wheelchairs, security guards scanning for trouble. Olivia approached the intake desk, her backpack clutched against her chest like a shield. "I'm in labor," she said, sliding her Medicaid card across the counter. "Triplets. 32 weeks. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly before her professional mask slipped back into place. She handed Olivia a clipboard stacked with forms. "Fill these out completely. The father's information goes on page 3. Olivia stared at the line labeled, "Father's name, contact information." Her pen hovered over the space before she wrote, "Not involved," in neat block letters. "Is there someone we should call for you?" the receptionist asked, noticing Olivia's solitude. "Family member? Friend?" "No, there's no one." Within 20 minutes, Olivia was wheeled to labor and delivery, hooked to monitors that tracked 3 rapid heartbeats. The resident on duty scanned her chart with clinical detachment. Triplets at 32 weeks means immediate C-section, he announced, not looking up. We'll prep you now. The operating room was a blur of harsh lights and voices speaking over her rather than to her. Olivia lay on the table, arms strapped down in a crucifixion pose, a blue surgical drape erected at her chest like a barrier between her consciousness and the procedure happening to her body. "I'm scared," she whispered, but no one was close enough to hear. As the anesthesia took effect, Olivia felt a single tear slide down her temple into her hair. She'd imagined this moment differently. Jackson holding her hand, perhaps nervous but present, excited to meet their children. Instead, strangers in masks peered down at her, their eyes revealing nothing. "BP dropping," someone called out. "Baby A is breech, coming now," another voice announced. "Significant bleeding from the placental wall." The medical chatter continued above her, urgent but controlled. Olivia felt tugging sensations, pressure but no pain. The room seemed to tilt and shimmer at the edges of her vision. Then, a sound, thin and reedy, barely audible over the machinery, but unmistakable. A cry. "Baby A, female, time of birth 6:42 a.m., called a nurse. Olivia strained to see, but her view was blocked by bodies and equipment. The sound of pediatric alarms replaced the brief cry. "Low oxygen saturation. Get her to NICU stat," ordered a new voice. Before Olivia could process what was happening, another announcement. "Baby B coming now." Silence followed this extraction. No cry, no announcement of vitals. The room's energy shifted, became more focused, more urgent. Olivia's heart raced, monitor beeping frantically. "Is my baby okay?" she called out, voice breaking. "Please tell me what's happening." No one answered. The anesthesiologist adjusted something in her IV, and the ceiling began to waver before her eyes. Baby B showing spontaneous respiration now. Weak, but present, someone finally reported. A third set of tugging sensations then. "Baby C, female, time of birth 6:47 a.m. This time a lusty cry pierced the room's tension, stronger than the first, insistent and alive. Olivia felt a surge of fierce joy before darkness claimed her consciousness. She woke hours later in a recovery room, body heavy and mouth desert dry. An older nurse with silver-streaked hair adjusted monitors beside her bed. "My babies," Olivia croaked. "Are they alive?" The nurse, her badge read Eleanor, laid a gentle hand on Olivia's arm. "All three are in the NICU, fighting hard. They're very small, but they're alive." "How small?" "Baby A is 3 pounds 2 ounces. Baby B is the smallest at 2 pounds 15 ounces. Baby C is 3 pounds even." Eleanor's voice was matter-of-fact but kind. "You've got 3 little warriors, but they'll need to stay in the hospital for a while. When can I see them?" "Let's get you stabilized first. Your blood pressure dropped dangerously during surgery. The doctor will be in soon to discuss your care." It was evening before Olivia was wheeled to the neonatal intensive care unit. The room was a symphony of beeping monitors and hushed voices, walls lined with incubators containing impossibly tiny occupants. Eleanor, who had stayed past her shift to accompany Olivia, guided her to 3 incubators positioned side by side. "Here they are," she said softly. Olivia pressed her palm against the clear plastic, tears blurring her vision. Each transparent box contained a miniature human, skin nearly translucent, ribs visible with each rapid breath. Tubes and wires connected their fragile bodies to machines that sustained their precarious hold on life. "They're so small," she whispered. "But complete," Eleanor reassured her. 10 fingers, 10 toes each. Perfect, just early. Olivia studied each daughter through the plastic barrier. Baby A lay quietly, a tiny frown creasing her forehead. Baby B's chest worked visibly with each breath, her struggle evident but determined. Baby C's hands were curled into defiant fists, her expression somehow fierce even in repose. "They need names," Eleanor said. "The hospital can't keep calling them Baby A, B, and C forever." Olivia nodded, pressing her forehead against the first incubator. "This one is destiny," she whispered, "because you will determine your own fate, no matter what anyone says." Moving to the second incubator, she placed her palm against the plastic. "You're Zora, because you bring the light of morning after our darkest night." At the third incubator, she smiled through her tears. "And you, my fierce one, are Maya, because you will carry wisdom beyond your years." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Beautiful names, strong names." "They'll need to be strong," Olivia replied softly. The following days established a grueling routine. Olivia was discharged after 48 hours, her body still healing from major surgery. Unable to afford a hotel, she traveled 2 hours by bus each way between her rented room and the hospital, spending every possible moment beside the incubators. The NICU staff provided a reclining chair where she could sit between the 3 stations, alternating her attention between her daughters. When the babies were stable enough, the nurses taught her kangaroo care, holding each tiny infant against her bare chest, skin to skin, to regulate their temperature and strengthen their bond. During the long night hours when the NICU was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors, Olivia would work on her laptop, refining her algorithm while keeping vigil over her daughters. Sometimes she fell asleep in the uncomfortable chair, waking with a stiff neck and aching incision to find Eleanor had covered her with a hospital blanket. One night, during a quiet moment between vital checks, Eleanor brought Olivia a cup of decent coffee from the doctor's lounge. "You're doing something important on that computer," Eleanor observed. "It wasn't a question." "An adaptive security algorithm," Olivia replied, too tired to simplify the explanation. "It learns from its own failures, strengthening defenses automatically against similar future attacks." Eleanor nodded, though the technical details were clearly beyond her understanding. "And the father of these beautiful girls? Does he know about them?" Olivia's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "He knows. He chose not to be involved." Eleanor's expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened slightly. "His loss," she said simply. "He discarded them before they were even born," Olivia elaborated, surprising herself with the admission, "said they were inadequate for his image." "Then he's a fool," Eleanor stated with the certainty of someone who had seen countless life-and-death struggles in the NICU. "Anyone who can't recognize the value of these fighters doesn't deserve them." Days turned to weeks. Each baby progressed at her own pace. Destiny was first to breathe without assistance, her tiny lungs growing stronger daily. Maya struggled with jaundice, her incubator equipped with special lights that gave her a bluish glow. Zora, the smallest, faced the greatest challenges, battling a heart murmur that required additional monitoring. Small victories were celebrated intensely. The first time each baby maintained her temperature independently, the first successful feeding without a tube, the first time Olivia was allowed to change their impossibly tiny diapers. Eleanor and the other nurses brought preemie clothes donated by former NICU parents, ensuring the triplets had clean, appropriately sized outfits as they grew. "Look at Maya holding your finger," Eleanor pointed out one afternoon. "She's got quite a grip for someone who weighs less than a bag of sugar." Olivia marveled at the perfect miniature fingers wrapped around her own. "She's going to be the determined one. I can tell already." Other milestones followed, Destiny opening her eyes fully for the first time, revealing irises so dark they appeared black. Zora finally breathing unassisted for a full hour, then 2, then a full day. Maya graduating from her jaundice lights, her skin tone deepening to match her sister's. Throughout July, Olivia continued refining her algorithm during the night shifts, explaining complex coding concepts to her daughters as if they could understand. Eleanor would sometimes listen from nearby, nodding encouragingly. "You're going to change the world with that," she said one night, peering over Olivia's shoulder at lines of code. "I don't understand a bit of it, but I can tell it's something special." "It's for them," Olivia replied, glancing at the 3 incubators. "Everything is for them now." By early August, all 3 girls had nearly doubled their birth weights. The NICU doctors began discussing discharge plans, contingent on the babies maintaining stable vital signs and feeding successfully. They'll need frequent follow-up appointments, the neonatologist explained, and specialized formula for premature multiple births. Olivia nodded, mentally calculating the cost against her dwindling savings. The night reception job had terminated her employment after her extended absence, and the health insurance marketplace enrollment period wouldn't open for months. On the morning the triplets were cleared for discharge, Olivia arrived with 3 second-hand car seats she'd purchased from a hospital employee's garage sale. Eleanor helped her dress each baby in donated going-home outfits, all slightly too large but clean and soft. "You've got my number," Eleanor reminded her, tucking an extra package of preemie diapers into Olivia's bag. "Call me anytime, day or night, if you have questions or concerns." "I don't know how to thank you," Olivia said, her voice thick with emotion. "Take care of these miracle girls," Eleanor replied simply. "And yourself." Loading 3 car seats into a taxi she could barely afford, Olivia felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. The driver helped stow her meager luggage in the trunk, eyeing the identical infants with curiosity. "Triplets, huh? Dad must have his hands full." "It's just us," Olivia corrected gently, checking each baby's straps one final time. As the taxi pulled away from the hospital, her phone vibrated with an incoming email. At a stoplight, she glanced at the notification. Adaptive Security Algorithm Proposal. Interest from Angel Tech Investments. Carrying 3 newborns into a tiny rented room, not knowing how she would survive the next day, Olivia couldn't imagine that the email on her phone would be the first piece of an empire that would one day make Jackson Reynolds beg for her attention. 3 years passed in a blur of sleepless nights, coding marathons, and the chaotic beauty of raising triplet daughters. Olivia's tiny Oakland apartment, though cramped at barely 700 square feet, represented a significant upgrade from her Chicago room. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating 3-year-old Destiny as she carefully climbed onto a chair positioned in front of Olivia's workstation. "Careful, honey," Olivia cautioned, glancing up from her video conference. On her laptop screen, 3 men in business casual attire frowned slightly as Destiny's curly head appeared at the edge of the frame. "Sorry about that," Olivia said, gently guiding her daughter back down. "As I was saying, the adaptive response rate increased 47% in the latest iteration." "Olivia," interrupted the middle executive, clearing his throat, "while your algorithm shows promise theoretically, we're concerned about market readiness. Clients want proven technology, not experimental systems." Across the room, Maya sat cross-legged on a colorful playmat, methodically reciting the alphabet backward while arranging wooden blocks by size and color. Beside her, Zora hunched over a sheet of construction paper, tiny tongue poking out in concentration as she drew intricate geometric patterns that seemed impossible for a 3-year-old's motor skills. Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, Maya continued, unaware of how unusual her abilities were. Olivia muted her microphone momentarily. "Sweethearts, remember our quiet work voices? Mommy needs 10 more minutes." Returning to the call, she steeled herself. "The adaptive security model isn't experimental. It's revolutionary. Traditional cybersecurity reacts to known threats. My system predicts variations before they emerge." The executives exchanged glances. "We'll discuss internally and circle back next week," the lead investor concluded, his tone making the outcome clear. After disconnecting, Olivia closed her eyes briefly before feeling small arms wrap around her leg. She looked down into Zora's inquisitive face. "Were those men being mean to you, Mommy?" she asked with disconcerting perception. "No, baby. They just don't understand our idea yet." Olivia lifted her daughter, marveling at how these 3 tiny humans had become her entire world. Sometimes people need time to see value in something new. That evening, after tucking the girls into their shared bedroom, 3 small beds arranged in a tight triangle, Olivia collapsed at her kitchen table. Her laptop displayed the monthly budget spreadsheet, numbers that refused to cooperate no matter how she adjusted them. Working remotely for StartPoint Technologies, the small firm that had invested in her initial algorithm provided steady income but barely covered their basic needs in the expensive Bay Area. Her phone chimed with an email notification. Opening it, Olivia found a message accidentally included in a company-wide thread. Johnson Algorithm Commercialization. Given market hesitancy toward female-led security products, recommend repackaging under StartPoint's primary brand. Can minimize her equity stake through Series B dilution while retaining IP ownership. Discuss Thursday. Olivia stared at the screen, a familiar coldness settling in her stomach. 3 years of dedicated work, breakthrough innovations, all while raising triplets alone. And they planned to sideline her, just as Jackson had. Not this time, she whispered, determination hardening her voice. She opened a new spreadsheet, creating calculations far different from her budget. How long could she survive without a salary? What minimum viable product could she develop independently in 6 months? Which industry connections might help her launch without StartPoint's resources? The numbers were daunting. Her savings would cover exactly 23 weeks of rent and basic necessities if she eliminated every non-essential expense. The girls' preschool would need to wait. Health insurance would become catastrophic coverage only. A soft knock interrupted her calculations. Eleanor, dear, faithful Eleanor, who had followed them to California after retiring from nursing, stood in the doorway between her attached studio apartment and Olivia's main unit. I heard you sighing all the way through the wall, she said, setting down a cup of chamomile tea. What's wrong? Olivia showed her the email. Eleanor's face darkened as she read. Those underhanded little... She caught herself. So what will you do? I'm leaving StartPoint, starting my own company. Olivia spoke the words aloud for the first time, feeling their weight. Eleanor studied her face carefully. You'll be walking away from stable income with 3 preschoolers. That's not a small decision. I've crunched the numbers. It's tight but possible if I land 1 client within 6 months. You're absolutely sure? Eleanor asked, not questioning Olivia's capability, but acknowledging the tremendous risk. Olivia's gaze drifted to the girl's bedroom door, where 3 colorful nameplate signs hung. Destiny, Zora, Maya. I'm already raising 3 children alone with no support system or safety net, she said quietly. I started from 0 once before with 3 newborns. This will actually be easier. The following week unfolded in a whirlwind of activity. Olivia submitted her resignation, eliciting panicked calls from StartPoint executives suddenly recognizing her value now that she was leaving. She declined their hasty equity offers, seeing through the transparent attempt to retain her innovation while limiting her control. Between preparing meals and managing toddler meltdowns, Olivia contacted everyone in her limited professional network. Most responded with polite discouragement about her prospects as a solo female founder in cybersecurity. On Wednesday afternoon, while the girls napped, Olivia met 3 women entrepreneurs at a small cafe near Lake Merritt. They were members of a Women in Tech mentoring group she'd joined months earlier. Samira, who ran a successful UX design firm, Kira, whose HR software company had recently been acquired, and Lynn, a veteran venture capitalist specializing in underrepresented founders. So, you're really doing this? Samira asked, stirring her latte. Going head-to-head with established security firms? Olivia nodded, pulling up technical specifications on her tablet. My algorithm already outperforms leading solutions by 30% in penetration testing. The problem isn't the technology, it's getting decision-makers to take me seriously. Lynn reviewed the business plan Olivia had drafted. Your runway is dangerously short. What happens after 6 months if you haven't secured funding? I go back to corporate employment, Olivia admitted. But I'll have retained full intellectual property rights to my work. Kira leaned forward. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I pitched to 78 VCs before getting my first yes. The statistics for Black women founders are abysmal. Less than 0.5% of venture funding goes to us. I know the numbers, Olivia replied steadily. But you're doing it anyway, Kira continued, a slow smile spreading across her face. Good. The startup ecosystem needs more women with your determination. After a moment's consideration, Lynn spoke up. I can't invest personally due to my firm's conflict policies, but I have something else to offer. My husband's converting our garage into a home office, but it won't be ready for at least 6 months. You're welcome to use it as your headquarters until then. Free rent, decent Wi-Fi. Olivia blinked back unexpected tears. That would be transformative. 2 days later, Olivia stood in Lynn's converted garage in Rockridge, surveying her new company headquarters. The space was basic: concrete floors, exposed beams, workable electricity, but represented opportunity beyond measure. She arranged 3 folding tables into a U-shape, positioning her computer equipment on one side and creating a small play area in the corner with toys and books for the girls. Eleanor helped her hang a large whiteboard on the main wall, where Olivia immediately began mapping out development milestones and potential client targets. What will you call it? Eleanor asked, watching Olivia write timeline in bold letters across the top of the board. Olivia paused, marker hovering. She'd considered dozens of options, wanting something that reflected both the technology's adaptive nature and her personal journey. Neurosync Technologies, she decided, because it's about creating neural pathways that synchronize and strengthen over time, just like we do. The following Monday morning, Olivia sat at the Oakland Government Center, filing incorporation paperwork for Neurosync Technologies with Maya on her lap, while Destiny and Zora colored logo ideas on scrap paper beside her. Corporation name? Asked the clerk, not looking up from her computer. Neurosync Technologies, Olivia replied, feeling a thrill at saying it officially. Principal business activity? Adaptive cybersecurity solutions? Number of shares authorized? 1 million common shares. Olivia had stayed up past midnight researching optimal corporate structures. When the final documents were processed, Olivia received her incorporation certificate, official validation that Neurosync Technologies now existed as a legal entity. The girls, sensing her excitement but not understanding its source, bounced around her legs as they left the building. Did you build something, Mommy? Zora asked, peering at the certificate. Yes, baby. I'm building something important. Olivia knelt to their level. And you 3 are going to help me. Within 2 weeks, Olivia made her first hire, Priya Sharma, a brilliant programmer fresh from Stanford who had been repeatedly overlooked by major tech companies for being too assertive. Unable to offer a competitive salary, Olivia instead provided equity and the promise of future compensation when funding materialized. Most startups fail, Priya acknowledged during their first meeting in the garage headquarters. But most startups aren't founded by someone who coded while raising premature triplets in poverty. That kind of determination is worth betting on. Their workdays developed a chaotic rhythm. Mornings began with Olivia and Eleanor tag-teaming breakfast for the girls before everyone relocated to the garage office. While Olivia and Priya coded, Eleanor would supervise the triplets' educational activities, occasionally taking them to nearby parks when cabin fever struck. One Tuesday afternoon, Zora developed a fever of 102 degrees. With Eleanor visiting her daughter in Sacramento, Olivia balanced her laptop on her knees, programming with one hand while holding a sleeping, feverish Zora against her chest. Destiny and Maya played quietly nearby, instinctively understanding that something was wrong. Between compiling code and making sales calls to potential clients, Olivia monitored Zora's temperature, administered children's ibuprofen, and maintained a calm facade that belied her exhaustion. When she finally fell asleep that night, laptop still open beside her, it was Eleanor who returned early from her trip to find Olivia unconscious from exhaustion, completing the code compilation and saving the files before gently closing the computer. The girls developed their own roles in the nascent company. Maya, methodical and precise, organized network cables by color and length. Zora, artistically inclined, drew user interface concepts that sometimes contained surprisingly insightful elements. Destiny, bold and outgoing, practiced typing on an old keyboard, mimicking her mother's focused expression. After 3 months of development, Olivia secured a meeting with a regional bank's security officer, NeuroSync's first potential client. She spent hours preparing her presentation, rehearsing technical explanations while simplifying complex concepts for non-specialists. When the day arrived, the bank's chief information security officer visited the garage office, raising an eyebrow at the unconventional headquarters. Olivia had arranged for Eleanor to take the girls to the Children's Museum, but a transportation mishap brought them back early. The CISO arrived to find Olivia in professional attire from the waist up, sweatpants below, hidden by the desk, explaining neural network architecture while simultaneously braiding Destiny's hair. Instead of appearing unprofessional, the scene seemed to humanize the cutting-edge technology. The CISO, a father of 4 himself, appeared impressed by both the adaptive algorithm and Olivia's multitasking abilities. Most security consultants I meet can barely manage their presentation slides, let alone 3 kids and revolutionary code, he commented. As Olivia closed her first real contract at that improvised desk in a converted garage, she couldn't imagine that in less than a decade, she would be declining a billion-dollar acquisition offer from the very company that had tried to steal her work. The same week she would discover that Jackson Reynolds had lost his CEO position after a vote of no confidence from his board. 2 years after signing her first contract in Lynn's garage, Olivia sat in a modest office space in downtown Oakland, the walls too thin to contain conversations from neighboring suites. A bank of refurbished computers hummed along one wall, while her small team of 6 employees worked at desks arranged in a tight cluster. The space was functional but Spartan, every dollar redirected to development rather than aesthetics. "Mr. Harrington, I understand your hesitation," Olivia spoke into her headset, pacing the limited floor space while negotiating with a reluctant client. "But our security solution offers adaptive protection that traditional firewalls simply can't match." The triplets, now 5 years old, sat at a small table in the corner, their presence a familiar sight to Olivia's team. Eleanor supervised their homework, occasionally glancing up to check if they were disturbing the work environment. Maya's tongue protruded slightly as she concentrated on advanced addition problems, while Zora carefully colored a detailed map of the solar system. Destiny, finishing her work first as usual, watched her mother with undisguised admiration. "Yes, we're a small company," Olivia continued, frustration edging her voice. "But our size allows us flexibility that larger security firms lack. I can implement personalized protocols within—" The client interrupted, his rejection evident from Olivia's expression. She ended the call with professional courtesy, then sighed deeply. "That's the 3rd no this week," she muttered to Sandeep, her lead developer. "Their loss," he replied without looking up from his code. "They'll come crawling back after the next major breach hits their outdated systems." Before Olivia could respond, Jasmine, her newly hired programmer, burst through the door, eyes wide with urgency. "You need to see this, Olivia. Something big is happening in the banking sector." The team gathered around the main monitor as financial news alerts scrolled across the screen. Breaking: major cyber attack targeting multiple financial institutions. 3 of the country's largest banks were reporting simultaneous security breaches, with customer data potentially compromised and transaction systems paralyzed. "First National is one of them," Sandeep noted. "Aren't they testing our secondary system?" 6 months earlier, First National Bank had agreed to install NeuroSync's security protocol as a backup to their primary system, a small concession from a skeptical IT director who'd been unwilling to fully commit to an unproven startup. The office phone rang with unusual urgency. Olivia answered to find First National's chief information officer on the line, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Johnson, your system is the only one still functioning. Everything else is locked down or compromised. We need to expand your protocol to our main servers immediately." The next 36 hours blurred into a crisis management marathon. Olivia and her team worked without breaks, expanding their security footprint across First National's network while simultaneously fending off ongoing attack attempts. The triplets slept in improvised beds made from yoga mats and blankets beneath Olivia's desk, occasionally waking to watch their mother orchestrate defense strategies with calm authority despite her exhaustion. Eleanor brought food and fresh clothes, managing both the children's needs and the team's basic requirements as they fought to contain the breach. By dawn of the second day, NeuroSync's adaptive algorithm had not only secured First National's systems, but had identified the attack's signature pattern, helping the other two banks isolate and neutralize the threat. Olivia finally stepped away from her workstation at noon, her eyes bloodshot but triumphant. She knelt beside the makeshift bed where her daughters dozed, stroking each tiny forehead with infinite tenderness before permitting herself a moment's rest. The following morning, newspaper headlines across the country proclaimed the narrow escape. Innovative algorithm saves banking system from catastrophic breach. Accompanying the main story was a small photograph of Olivia, taken months earlier at a local tech meetup, looking serious but determined beside a simple NeuroSync logo. "Mom, you're famous!" Destiny exclaimed, pointing at the newspaper Eleanor had brought with breakfast. The office phone began ringing continuously. Venture capital firms that had previously ignored Olivia's pitches now left urgent messages. Government agencies requested meetings. Tech industry publications demanded interviews. "I don't understand," Zora said, watching her mother juggle 3 calls simultaneously. "Why do they want to talk to you now? Your program always worked this good." "This well," Olivia corrected automatically, covering the mouthpiece. "And sometimes, sweetheart, people only see value after everyone else does too." Among the callers was the Department of Defense, requesting an immediate meeting to discuss potential applications for national security. Olivia scheduled it for the following week, then turned her attention to the most immediate challenge, the triplets' first day of kindergarten. That morning, Olivia stood outside the public elementary school, kneeling to straighten Maya's backpack straps while Zora and Destiny bounced with excitement beside her. "Remember, be yourselves but be kind," she instructed, fighting unexpected tears. "I'll pick you up at 3 o'clock sharp." "Promise?" Destiny asked, suddenly serious. "Even with all the important people calling you?" "I promise," Olivia affirmed. "Nothing is more important than you three." Throughout the day, between responding to media inquiries and rescheduling client meetings, Olivia checked the time obsessively, determined that her first major success wouldn't come at her daughter's expense. At 2:45, she excused herself from a call with an insistent venture capitalist, hurrying to arrive at the school before the dismissal bell. The triplets emerged with their teacher, who requested a moment of Olivia's time. Her heart sank, anticipating problems on their very first day. "Ms. Johnson, I need to discuss your daughter's exceptional abilities," the teacher began. "Maya solved third-grade math problems during assessment. Zora created an organizational system for our classroom library that's more efficient than the one I've used for years. And Destiny somehow reprogrammed our educational tablet to bypass the time limits." Olivia suppressed a smile. "They're enthusiastic learners." "They're extraordinary," the teacher corrected. "We should discuss advanced placement options." That evening, after tucking the girls into bed with extra stories to celebrate their successful first day, Olivia sat at her kitchen table reviewing an email that had arrived during dinner, a formal offer for NeuroSync's services from the Treasury Department, with a contract value that contained an extra 0 compared to anything she'd previously signed. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed her acceptance. 3 years earlier, she had counted coins for diapers and formula. Now federal agencies were entrusting her with national financial security. The following week brought Olivia's first trip to Washington, D.C., staying in a luxury hotel where staff addressed her as Ms. Johnson with deferential respect. The contrast between her current circumstances and her desperate days in Chicago was disorienting. She purchased her first professional suit for the Pentagon meeting, Nothing extravagant but properly tailored and new rather than second-hand. Between presentations to serious-faced military officials, Olivia FaceTimed with the triplets, showing them landmarks visible from her hotel window and promising souvenirs from the Air and Space Museum. Despite Eleanor's capable caregiving, the separation ached in Olivia's chest, a constant awareness of 3 heart pieces existing miles away. Her return flight to Oakland brought unexpected turbulence, both atmospheric and professional. Waiting in her office was an enormous arrangement of long-stemmed roses with a card reading, "Interested in acquisition discussions. Initial valuation, $15 million. It was signed by the CEO of TechGuard, one of the largest cybersecurity firms in Silicon Valley. $15 million, Eleanor whispered, having waited at the office to share the news in person. Olivia, that's a lowball offer, Olivia finished, her expression thoughtful rather than excited. They know we're worth at least twice that after the banking rescue. Eleanor poured apple juice into paper cups, handing one to Olivia in a makeshift toast. From a garage to the Pentagon in 2 years. Who would have thought? Not Jackson Reynolds, Olivia replied softly, allowing herself the rare indulgence of speaking his name. Have you ever looked him up? Eleanor asked. To see what happened to him? Olivia shook her head. He doesn't exist in our world anymore. That night, however, after the girls were asleep, curiosity overcame her resolve. She opened her laptop and typed Jackson Reynolds Enterprises into the search bar. Recent articles showed his company had completed its IPO successfully, though share prices had stabilized below initial projections. Photos displayed Jackson at industry events, always impeccably dressed, often with attractive women on his arm, none lasting in multiple pictures. He looked essentially the same, perhaps slightly harder around the eyes, a touch less vitality in his smile. Olivia closed the browser, feeling neither anger nor satisfaction, just a curious emptiness where pain had once lived. He had become a stranger, as irrelevant to her daily existence as a character in a half-remembered film. The next morning, she called the CEO of TechGuard personally. I appreciate your interest, she said, but NeuroSync isn't for sale at this time. However, I'd be open to discussing a strategic partnership that maintains our operational independence. 3 days later, she signed NeuroSync's first 8-figure contract, establishing the company as a rising star in the cybersecurity sector. The same afternoon, she approved the lease on a proper office space in downtown San Francisco, with dedicated childcare facilities for employees' children and a private classroom where the triplets could receive specialized instruction while remaining near their mother. As Olivia evaluated architectural plans for the new headquarters, her mind flashed briefly to the marble and glass penthouse where Jackson had discarded her. She had once believed that sanctuary represented success. Now she understood that true success wasn't about possession of beautiful spaces, but about creating environments where everyone could thrive. That evening, reading bedtime stories to her daughters, Olivia felt a contentment that transcended financial milestones. When Destiny asked if they were rich now, Olivia considered her answer carefully. We have what we need, she replied, and enough to help others. That's a different kind of wealth than just money. While evaluating the first multi-million-dollar offer for her nascent company, Olivia didn't know that 5 years later she would be commanding a corporation valued in billions, exactly when Jackson Reynolds would begin his downward spiral after 3 consecutive failed products. 3 years transformed NeuroSync from a promising startup into a mid-sized tech powerhouse with 200 employees and gleaming offices in San Francisco and Washington, D.C. Olivia Johnson, now 32, stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, watching fog roll across the Golden Gate Bridge while her executive team assembled for their quarterly strategy meeting. Revenue exceeded projections by 17%, reported her CFO, sliding financial documents across the polished conference table. The Pentagon contract renewal includes expanded parameters, and 3 Fortune 500 companies have requested enterprise-level implementations. Olivia nodded, her reflection in the glass a stark contrast to the desperate woman who had once programmed in a converted garage. Her tailored blazer replaced thrift store finds. Her natural curls were now maintained by one of San Francisco's top stylists. Yet she had deliberately maintained a sense of approachability in her appearance, no flashy jewelry or ostentatious displays of wealth. "And the foundation initiatives?" she asked, turning from the window. "The coding academies in underserved communities are at capacity," her community impact director responded. "The scholarship program for single parents in tech has its first 10 graduates this spring." Olivia smiled, genuine satisfaction warming her face. Creating pathways for others facing similar challenges had become central to NeuroSync's corporate identity, a reflection of her personal values rather than mere public relations. Her morning routine had evolved alongside the company's growth. In their comfortable Palo Alto home, spacious but not extravagant, Olivia helped 8-year-old Destiny locate her science project while Maya organized her cello sheet music with methodical precision. Zora, already dressed in her school uniform, tinkered with a small electronic device of her own design. "Mom, can you sign this permission slip?" Destiny asked, thrusting a crumpled form toward Olivia. "We're visiting the Computer History Museum tomorrow." "The museum where they have your algorithm on display?" Maya clarified, her vocabulary increasingly sophisticated. "The docent said you revolutionized adaptive security protocols." Olivia signed the form, smiling at her daughter's matter-of-fact recitation of her achievements. "That's right. But remember, what matters isn't having your work displayed. It's creating something that helps people." Through the kitchen window, she watched their driver waiting patiently beside the company car, a practical hybrid SUV rather than the flashy luxury vehicles favored by many tech executives. The girls attended the Brightwood Academy for Gifted Children, where their exceptional abilities received appropriate nurturing without isolating them from diverse peer groups. "Did you pack the prototypes for your engineering club?" Olivia asked Zora, who nodded enthusiastically. "I think I've fixed the power consumption issue," she replied, slipping the device into her backpack. At 8, Zora was already developing simple applications, her technological intuition reminiscent of Olivia's own childhood aptitude. After seeing the girls off to school, Olivia arrived at NeuroSync headquarters for a media interview with a prominent technology magazine. The journalist, a young woman with bright eyes and rapid-fire questions, seemed simultaneously intimidated and inspired by Olivia's presence. "Your security protocol prevented the largest coordinated cyber attack in banking history," she noted, recording device positioned between them. "Yet you've faced resistance breaking into certain markets. How much of that is because you're a woman of color in a field dominated by white men?" Olivia considered her response carefully. NeuroSync isn't just about algorithms. It's about creating technology that reflects the diversity of real-world challenges. Homogeneous teams create blind spots. Our success stems from diverse perspectives identifying vulnerabilities others miss. The journalist nodded, then asked more pointedly, "You've been called unnecessarily aggressive by competitors when defending your intellectual property. Would a male CEO face similar characterizations?" "Probably not," Olivia acknowledged with a slight smile. "But I've learned that my responsibility isn't managing others' perceptions. It's building something meaningful while creating opportunities for those who come after me." Later that afternoon, Olivia faced a more challenging interaction in the company's sleek conference room. Venture capitalists from Apex Partners sat opposite her executive team, discussing a potential Series C funding round. Despite NeuroSync's proven track record, the lead investor continually directed technical questions to Olivia's male CTO rather than to her. After the third occurrence, Olivia interjected smoothly but firmly. "As CEO and chief architect of our core technology, I can address that directly." She proceeded to explain complex technical specifications with such precision that the investor's expression shifted from skepticism to grudging respect. When the meeting concluded, Olivia's CTO approached her privately. "You shouldn't have to constantly reprove your technical credentials," he muttered, frustrated on her behalf. "Perhaps not," she replied evenly, "but every time someone underestimates me, they create an opportunity for me to exceed expectations." That weekend, Olivia implemented one of her most cherished corporate innovations, the Children's Corner at NeuroSync headquarters. The dedicated space allowed employees to bring children to work when necessary, equipped with educational technology, comfortable seating, and supervision from qualified staff. The triplets often spent afternoons there after school, completing homework while occasionally observing their mother in her professional element. On Monday morning, Olivia's executive assistant burst into her office without knocking, an unprecedented breach of protocol that immediately signaled emergency. "TechGuard is attempting a hostile takeover," she announced, handing Olivia a tablet displaying financial alerts. "They've started purchasing available shares on the open market and have approached 3 of our minor investors with buyout offers." TechGuard, the same company whose acquisition offer Olivia had rejected 3 years earlier, had apparently decided that if NeuroSync wouldn't sell willingly, they would simply take control. Their CEO, a notorious corporate raider with a particular disdain for female founders, had publicly dismissed NeuroSync as lucky rather than innovative despite its remarkable success. Olivia immediately assembled her crisis team, legal counsel, financial advisors, board members, and key executives for an emergency strategy session. While others panicked, she remained composed, analyzing options with the same methodical approach she applied to complex code. "They're exploiting our delayed international expansion," noted the CFO nervously. "Without Asian market penetration, our valuation remains vulnerable." Olivia tapped her pen thoughtfully against the conference table. "Then we accelerate what they believe we can't accomplish. We pivot to defense through expansion." Over the next 72 hours, Olivia barely left headquarters, coordinating a multi-pronged strategy to protect NeuroSync's independence. When exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, she retreated briefly to the Children's Corner where the triplets were staying late, drawing strength from their presence. "Are the bad people trying to take your company, Mom?" Destiny asked perceptively, noting her mother's tension despite Olivia's efforts to shield them. "Some people think they can take what others build," Olivia explained, choosing her words carefully. "But we're going to show them that what we've created is stronger than their attempts to claim it." 2 weeks later, Olivia boarded a company jet bound for Tokyo with the triplets in tow. While other executives might have left their children behind for such a crucial business trip, Olivia had developed a different philosophy, integrating her roles as mother and CEO rather than compartmentalizing them. The Japanese conglomerate Tanaka Industries had expressed interest in NeuroSync's technology months earlier, but negotiations had proceeded slowly. Now, accelerated by necessity, Olivia arranged meetings with Tanaka's leadership while ensuring the trip provided educational value for her daughters. Between high-stakes negotiations, they visited Tokyo's National Museum of Emerging Science and Innovation, explored historic temples, and attended a traditional tea ceremony. The girls observed their mother moving effortlessly between cultures, commanding respect in boardrooms while still making time for their questions and observations. On the trip's final day, Olivia signed a strategic partnership agreement with Tanaka Industries, securing both international expansion and protection against TechGuard's hostile takeover attempt. The Japanese executives, initially surprised by the presence of children in preliminary discussions, ultimately expressed admiration for Olivia's integrated approach to leadership. "Your daughters see you create value and command respect," noted Tanaka's aging CEO during the signing ceremony. "This teaches more than any theoretical lesson about women's capabilities." Upon returning to San Francisco, Olivia held a company-wide gathering to announce their successful defense and international expansion. Unlike many CEOs who would claim personal credit, she methodically thanked each department's contribution, remembering names of individual contributors and specific achievements regardless of their position in the corporate hierarchy. That evening, carrying her exhausted daughters from the car after their long flight, Olivia found them already asleep, surrounded by books and project materials they had brought to work on during travel. As she gently placed each girl in her bed, the familiar wave of fierce love washed over her, the emotion that had propelled her forward when all other motivation failed. Later, preparing for bed herself, Olivia flipped through a business magazine that had arrived during her absence. A small article caught her attention. Reynolds Enterprises faces stock slide after third consecutive product failure. The accompanying photo showed Jackson looking notably older, worry lines etching his once smooth face, premature gray appearing at his temples. Olivia studied his image dispassionately, noting the signs of stress that the carefully composed corporate portrait couldn't conceal. His company, once positioned to dominate tech investment, had failed to deliver on promised innovations, while investors increasingly questioned his leadership capabilities. She closed the magazine without emotion, neither satisfied nor resentful, simply contemplative about how paths diverge in unexpected ways. The man who had deemed her without refinement and without the right connections was watching his empire falter, while she, the investment he had decided to cut, was building something that would endure. As she placed the magazine in her bedside drawer, Olivia reflected on the journey from desperate single mother to respected industry leader. The hardships she had endured, far from weakening her, had forced her to develop strengths she might never have discovered otherwise. Jackson's cruelty, intended to diminish her, had instead catalyzed her determination to succeed not despite her circumstances but because of the resilience they had forged. While putting away the magazine, Olivia couldn't imagine that in a few years she would be invited as the keynote speaker at the same Chicago conference where Jackson Reynolds would appear as a secondary panelist, an encounter neither was prepared to face. California sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the NeuroSync Technologies headquarters in Palo Alto, casting a golden glow across the sleek 18th floor. Olivia Johnson stood at the panoramic windows, watching employees crossing the meticulously landscaped corporate campus below. 4 years had transformed her mid-sized company into a global technology giant valued at over $18 billion, with 4,000 employees spread across 3 continents. The second quarter numbers exceeded projections by 22%, Martha Klein, her CFO, reported, sliding a tablet across the polished conference table. Asian market expansion is 6 months ahead of schedule, and the new security protocol implementation for the European Union banking system will be completed next month. Olivia nodded, adjusting the sapphire brooch on her Armani blazer. The deep blue stone, her first significant personal indulgence after the company's valuation crossed $10 billion, caught the light as she turned back toward the room. "And the Forbes cover story?" she asked, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had become her trademark. "Have they confirmed the final details?" "Their fact-checkers called this morning," Martha replied. "They want to verify the current market valuation and employee headcount." "Confirm everything," Olivia directed, taking a sip from her coffee cup. "Complete transparency, especially the current market value." At 36, Olivia had become one of the most recognizable figures in the technology sector. Her adaptive AI algorithm had revolutionized not just cybersecurity but entire industries, from healthcare data protection to financial systems infrastructure. What began as a solution for network optimization had evolved into the backbone of global cybersecurity, with governments and corporations alike depending on NeuroSync's constantly evolving protective systems. Her phone vibrated with an incoming text. Glancing down, Olivia smiled at the message from Destiny. "Dominated semifinals. Maya competing in math finals and Zora in science presentation." "Good news?" Martha asked, noting her expression. "The girls' academic competition," Olivia explained, typing a quick response of encouragement. "They're finalists in the state championship." At 12, the triplets had blossomed into remarkable young women, each developing distinctive talents while sharing their mother's determination and intelligence. They attended Westridge Academy for exceptional students, where their abilities received appropriate challenges without isolating them from peers. The day consumed hours in its familiar rhythm. A virtual meeting with European investors, a video conference with Pentagon officials about security contract renewals, final approval for the NeuroSync 5.0 launch scheduled for the following month. By 5 o'clock, Olivia was sliding into the back seat of her company car, directing her driver to the state science competition where her daughters were competing. "We should arrive by 5:30, her driver confirmed, navigating smoothly through Palo Alto traffic. "I've taken the alternate route to avoid the expressway congestion." Olivia nodded gratefully, using the drive to review her notes for tomorrow's board meeting. The car's privacy partition allowed her these moments of concentration, transitioning mentally from CEO to mother, roles she had learned to integrate rather than separate. The auditorium hummed with activity when she arrived, parents clutching programs, nervous students making last-minute adjustments to displays, judges conferring in hushed tones. Olivia slipped into a seat near the front, drawing subtle glances of recognition as she settled in. "That's Olivia Johnson," one judge whispered to another, "the NeuroSync founder." "Her daughters are competing tonight," came the reply. "All three are apparently brilliant." On stage, Maya stood confidently beside a whiteboard covered with complex differential equations, explaining applications for predictive algorithmic modeling with the eloquence of a graduate student rather than a 12-year-old. In the adjacent presentation area, Zora demonstrated a prototype water purification system using nanotechnology, her hands moving with practiced precision as she explained filtration mechanisms. Destiny, not competing in this round, recorded everything with professional-grade equipment, occasionally adjusting camera angles to capture her sister's presentations. Her entrepreneurial instincts had manifested early, complementing Maya's theoretical brilliance and Zora's innovative engineering talents. Olivia watched with a mixture of fierce pride and bone-deep exhaustion. The path to this moment had demanded sacrifices few could comprehend. The early years especially had been brutal, coding through midnight hours while infants slept, negotiating initial contracts with babies on her lap, refusing unfavorable investment terms repeatedly offered to a single mother without business pedigree. Her breakthrough had come at 28, when a catastrophic security failure at 3 major banks was resolved exclusively by NeuroSync's adaptive algorithm. Overnight, Olivia transformed from promising entrepreneur to financial system savior. The government contracts that followed established the foundation for her empire, providing both credibility and capital for unprecedented expansion. After the competition concluded, with Maya winning first place in advanced mathematics and Zora receiving the Innovation Award in Applied Sciences, Olivia took the girls to their favorite restaurant to celebrate. The upscale Italian bistro had a private room ready, with sparkling cider chilling alongside Olivia's preferred mineral water. "Did you see Judge Patel's face when I explained the quaternion rotation system?" Maya asked, eyes bright with intellectual excitement. "He said nobody's ever approached spatial algorithms from that perspective before." "And the NASA engineer asked for my contact information," Zora added, twirling pasta around her fork. "She thinks my filtration design could have applications for extended space missions." Destiny looked up from reviewing her footage on a tablet. "Mom, are you really giving the keynote at the TechVision Summit in Chicago next month?" Olivia nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "I am. It's the industry's largest conference this year." "You don't like Chicago," Zora observed, always the most perceptive about their mother's emotions. "You get quiet whenever it's mentioned." "It's not that I don't like Chicago," Olivia replied carefully. "The city just brings back memories." Maya tilted her head analytically. "Is it because of our father, the one who lived there?" Olivia's momentary silence answered the question. Throughout the years, she had shared only essential information about Jackson Reynolds, that he wasn't prepared for fatherhood, that he chose his career over family. She never mentioned the cruelty, the exact words he used to discard her as inadequate, inferior, disposable. "Chicago is just a city," she finally answered. And this conference represents final recognition of everything we've built together. The girls exchanged glances, communicating in the silent language of triplets. They had grown increasingly curious about their origins, occasionally asking questions that Olivia answered truthfully, but without unnecessary detail. They knew they had been born prematurely, that their mother had faced significant hardship, but the full extent of Jackson's rejection remained carefully edited. 3 days later, NeuroSync's private jet touched down at O'Hare International Airport. Olivia gazed through the window at the Chicago skyline, memories washing over her, arriving 12 years earlier on a Greyhound bus, pregnant and directionless, with $2,000 and no plan beyond survival. "It looks different than I imagined," Destiny commented, pressing her face against the window. "From your stories, I thought it would be snowing." "It only snows in winter," Olivia explained, smoothing her daughter's hair. "June in Chicago can actually be quite beautiful." Their suite at the Four Seasons offered a spectacular view of Lake Michigan, ironically similar to the penthouse view she had shared with Jackson, though from a different angle. While the girls marveled at the cityscape, Olivia retreated to the master bedroom to review her keynote address. New Paradigms in Artificial Intelligence, Revolutionizing the Corporate Future. The speech represented more than just another professional obligation. It signified complete vindication, delivering the most prestigious address in the industry, in the same city where she had once been deemed worthless, while her daughters watched from the front row. "Mom?" Maya appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "I've been researching the other speakers at the conference. Did you know Reynolds Enterprises has a representative on the third day? A panel discussion about investment trends." Olivia's fingers stilled on her laptop keyboard. "Is that so?" "Jackson Reynolds," Maya continued, scanning the information. "He's listed as CEO, but their corporate performance metrics are concerning. 3 consecutive quarters of declining value, significant staff reductions last year, and their last major product release underperformed projections by 37%. Of course, Maya would have researched everything about the conference, including detailed financial analyses of participating companies. Her analytical mind consumed and processed information with extraordinary efficiency. "Many tech companies are facing challenges in the current market," Olivia replied neutrally. "But not NeuroSync," Destiny noted, joining them with Zora following close behind. "Your adaptive security model actually thrives during economic uncertainty because threat levels increase." Olivia closed her laptop, giving her full attention to her daughters. Success in technology isn't just about market conditions. It's about vision and execution, seeing possibilities others miss, and building solutions that address real needs. "Like you did," Zora observed, "when everyone said adaptive AI couldn't work for real-time security applications." "Exactly," Olivia confirmed. "Sometimes the most valuable innovations are those others dismiss as impossible." That evening, while the girls were engrossed in a movie in the suite's living room, Olivia stood by the window, gazing at the Chicago skyline illuminated against the night. 12 years ago, she had wandered these streets pregnant and abandoned, sleeping in shelters and eating at soup kitchens. Now she returned as a billionaire, bringing her daughters to witness her recognition as an industry pioneer. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. Jackson had cast her aside as worthless, yet she had built something extraordinary from that very rejection. The algorithm that made her billions had been conceptualized during sleepless nights in a rented room, refined during midnight hours beside incubators containing her premature daughters, and launched from a converted garage while balancing toddlers on her lap. Across the city, in another suite at the same hotel, Jackson Reynolds adjusted his tie nervously before the mirror, reviewing notes for his panel discussion. As CEO of Reynolds Enterprises, now a mid-sized company struggling to maintain relevance in the technology sector, he had been invited to offer perspectives on investment strategies for emerging technologies, a secondary panel at the same conference where Olivia would deliver the keynote address. Not for a moment did he imagine that the O. Johnson listed as the main speaker was the same woman he had expelled from his life 12 years earlier, or that the 3 girls accompanying her carried his DNA. The universe, it seemed, had a peculiar sense of timing, preparing a confrontation neither of them anticipated, but both had been moving toward since the moment of their separation. While finalizing her keynote in her hotel suite that night, Olivia had no way of knowing that in less than 24 hours she would stand face to face with the man who had discarded her as inadequate, now desperate to save his faltering company while she commanded an empire. The Chicago Metropolitan Convention Center buzzed with anticipation as tech industry luminaries streamed through its glass doors. The main hall, adorned with sleek digital displays and minimalist decor, awaited 3,000 attendees for the most anticipated presentation of the Tech Vision Summit. Staff members made final adjustments to the stage lighting while technicians tested the sound system one last time. In the exclusive VIP lounge, Jackson Reynolds nursed his second scotch, the amber liquid swirling in his crystal tumbler as he attempted to charm potential investors. At 42, premature gray streaked his temples, and fine lines had etched themselves around his eyes, markers of stress rather than wisdom. His tailored suit, while expensive, hung slightly loose on his frame, evidence of recent weight loss that accompanied his company's declining fortunes. The Reynolds Enterprises recovery plan focuses on strategic diversification, he explained to a skeptical Japanese investor. Our next-generation portfolio management system launches next quarter. The investor nodded politely but without enthusiasm. 3 consecutive product failures had damaged Reynolds Enterprises' reputation beyond easy repair, and Jackson's once magnetic confidence had acquired a desperate edge that sophisticated investors instantly recognized. "Have you seen the latest Forbes?" the investor asked, abruptly changing the subject as he extracted the magazine from his leather portfolio. Jackson nearly choked on his drink. The magazine's cover featured a striking black woman in her mid-30s, wearing a perfectly tailored blue suit, gazing directly into the camera with unwavering confidence. The headline read, "Olivia Johnson, How the AI Queen Built an $18 billion Empire from Nothing." "Impossible," Jackson muttered, his legs suddenly unsteady. The face was more mature, more polished, but unmistakably Olivia, the woman he had discarded 12 years earlier with $2,000 and instructions never to contact him again. Before he could compose himself, a ripple of excitement swept through the VIP area. Conversations hushed as attention shifted toward the entrance. Olivia Johnson had arrived, flanked by 3 identical preteen girls, all wearing modern blazers in the corporate colors of NeuroSync Technologies. "Her daughters are identical triplets," someone nearby commented. "All gifted. The middle one developed an algorithm at 10 that Google tried to buy for millions." Jackson stood frozen, unable to move or speak as he watched Olivia navigate the room with effortless grace. She greeted CEOs and government officials with the natural ease of someone accustomed to moving in elite circles. Her skin glowed with health, her natural curls styled in an elegant updo that complemented her designer outfit. Nothing about her resembled the desperate pregnant woman he had evicted from his penthouse. His entire body trembled when his eyes fell on the girls. Even from across the room he could see his own features reflected in their faces, the shape of their eyes, the slightly crooked smile, the set of their jaws. His daughters, 3 identical manifestations of his DNA, wearing confidence as naturally as their mother. "Reynolds, are you all right?" asked a potential investor, noticing his pallor. "Fine," Jackson managed, downing the remainder of his scotch in one burning swallow. "Just recognized someone I haven't seen in years." The announcement for attendees to take their seats provided welcome escape from further explanation. Jackson found himself moving automatically toward the main hall, securing a seat near the back where he could observe without being easily noticed. When Olivia took the stage, the massive auditorium fell into respectful silence. Her presence commanded attention immediately. Back straight, movements deliberate, voice clear and authoritative as she thanked the organizers. For 45 minutes, she detailed her vision for adaptive technology's future, casually mentioning Asian expansions and billion-dollar European government contracts that made Jackson's recent business struggles seem pathetically small by comparison. The fundamental misconception about artificial intelligence, she explained, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hall, is treating it as a static tool rather than an evolving ecosystem. At NeuroSync, we've built frameworks that learn not just from success but from failure, systems that transform attempted breaches into strengthened defenses. Jackson watched, mesmerized and horrified simultaneously, as Olivia articulated complex technological concepts with elegant simplicity. The confidence he had once mistaken for naivety had matured into formidable executive presence. The woman he had deemed without refinement now embodied sophisticated leadership that had 3,000 industry leaders hanging on her every word. During the question session, a young entrepreneur raised his hand. "Ms. Johnson, you built an empire while raising triplets as a single mother. How did you balance those responsibilities?" A small, knowing smile touched Olivia's lips. "When someone tells you that you have no value, you have two options: believe them or prove them wrong. My daughters were my motivation, not my obstacle. Every time someone suggested I couldn't succeed with 3 children, it simply clarified what I needed to demonstrate." Her eyes scanned the audience, momentarily connecting with Jackson's. A flash of recognition crossed her face, quickly replaced by a neutral, professional expression as she moved to the next question. The cocktail reception following the keynote transformed the convention center's grand ballroom into a networking battlefield, with Olivia as the primary target. CEOs of Fortune 500 companies waited patiently for a few minutes of her attention. Venture capitalists pressed business cards into her hand. Politicians angled for photographs that would associate them with her success. Jackson remained paralyzed at the periphery, nursing another scotch while watching the magnetic pull Olivia exerted on the room. The 3 girls moved confidently through the crowd, not clingy or awkward, but poised and articulate as they engaged with adults who treated them with surprising respect. Finally, gathering every ounce of courage, Jackson approached. Olivia was speaking with Microsoft's CEO when he interrupted. "Olivia, it's been a long time." She turned slowly, studying him with the detached interest one might give an unusual museum exhibit. Her expression revealed neither anger nor surprise, merely clinical assessment. "Jackson Reynolds," she replied, her voice controlled and cool. "What an unexpected development." The Microsoft CEO, sensing tension, discreetly excused himself. "You look incredible," Jackson stammered, his practiced charm deserting him entirely. "Your success is impressive." "Is it?" Olivia maintained a polite smile, though her eyes remained coldly evaluative. "Curious, considering you specifically informed me that I lacked sufficient potential or refinement to succeed in your world." Before Jackson could respond, one of the triplets approached. The one he would later learn was Zora. She carried herself with the same quiet confidence as her mother. "Mom, the Japanese ambassador is looking for you to discuss the Tokyo expansion," she reported professionally. Jackson stared at the girl, seeing his own reflection in her features. "You must be Zora Johnson," she responded politely, extending her hand with perfect etiquette. "And you are?" "An old acquaintance of your mother's," Olivia interjected smoothly. "Mr. Reynolds was just leaving." "Actually," Jackson swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry, "I was hoping we might talk privately, perhaps about partnership opportunities." The desperation in his voice was thinly veiled. His company needed the association with NeuroSync's success more than he could admit. At that moment, the other 2 girls approached, carrying tablets with conference notes. They moved with synchronized grace, their identical faces animated by distinct personalities. "Mom, we calculated the growth potential if we implement that algorithm modification we discussed," said the one with glasses. Maya, he would later learn. Jackson felt blood drain from his face as he saw all three girls together. Undeniable evidence of his genetic contribution standing before him. The realization hit him with physical force. They are my daughters, Olivia cut him off firmly. My heirs, future leaders of NeuroSync. Destiny, the most observant of the three, studied Jackson with undisguised curiosity. Is he the one? The man you mentioned once, who said investing in you would be a catastrophic financial mistake? Jackson blanched. The words, his own cruel dismissal, returned to haunt him with perfect clarity. He became aware that a circle of important industry figures had formed around them, catching fragments of the conversation. "Olivia, please, can we speak privately?" he implored, voice lowered urgently. "We have nothing to discuss in private," she responded, maintaining perfect composure. "Any business proposals can be sent through my acquisitions department, though I should warn you that we rarely consider companies with consecutive failure records like Reynolds Enterprises." Maya tilted her head analytically. "Reynolds, as in Reynolds Enterprises? The company that lost 64% of market value over the last 3 years?" Jackson choked slightly. The girl had memorized his company's financial data. Of course she had. "Your timing is interesting, Mr. Reynolds," Olivia continued, allowing a slight smile to touch her lips. 12 years ago, you told me I would embarrass your corporate image, that I lacked refinement or connections to survive in your world. Now it seems our roles have reversed." At that moment, Apple's founder approached, warmly greeting Olivia before turning to Jackson. "You two know each other already? Lucky you, Reynolds. Ms. Johnson is practically a living legend. Built NeuroSync literally from nothing. Inspiring story." "From nothing?" Jackson repeated automatically, the words sticking in his throat. "Absolutely," the executive continued enthusiastically. "Started programming in homeless shelters while pregnant. Rejected by 27 venture capitalists. Raised 3 daughters alone while building one of history's most revolutionary algorithms. A true American success story." Each word landed like a physical blow. Jackson had never allowed himself to imagine Olivia's journey after he expelled her from his life. He had assumed she would struggle briefly, then return to her middle-class family, perhaps eventually finding a suitable partner of her own socio-economic background. The reality that she had faced homelessness with his unborn children made him physically ill. A photographer approached their group. "Ms. Johnson, could we get a picture of you with your daughters for the event coverage?" "Of course," Olivia responded graciously, positioning herself between the 3 girls, who automatically arranged themselves in their usual formation. "Sir, could you step aside, please?" the photographer requested, gesturing for Jackson to move out of the frame. As he shuffled backward, Jackson heard Zora ask quietly, "Who was that man, Mother?" Olivia's response, perfectly audible in the momentary silence, drove the final stake through his heart. Just someone who failed to recognize value when it was in his hands. Perhaps the greatest asset evaluation error in recent American business history. While the triplets posed professionally for the camera, Jackson retreated toward the bar, his carefully constructed reality crumbling around him. The women and girls he had discarded as worthless had transformed into something extraordinary, living proof of his catastrophic misjudgment. As the photographer captured the image of Olivia surrounded by their daughters, Jackson could not possibly know that someone had discreetly filmed their encounter, footage that would, within hours, become viral and forever change the power dynamic between Olivia Johnson and the man who had once deemed her unworthy. Jackson's footsteps faltered as he retreated from the confrontation, the weight of recognition settling like lead in his stomach. Across the convention center ballroom, camera flashes illuminated Olivia and the triplets, his daughters, their poised smiles a stark contrast to his own unraveling composure. He reached the bar, fingers trembling as he ordered another scotch, desperate to steady himself against the shock of discovery. Olivia maintained her professional demeanor as the photographer captured several poses. "Perhaps one with just you, Ms. Johnson." The Forbes editor requested individual shots as well. As she adjusted her position, Olivia noticed a small cluster of conference attendees watching the interaction with undisguised interest. Several held phones at waist level, recording discreetly. The encounter with Jackson had not gone unnoticed, and in the digital age, privacy in public spaces was merely an illusion. "Girls, why don't you visit the technology showcase? I believe they're demonstrating quantum computing applications," she suggested smoothly. "I'll join you shortly after I finish with these photos." The triplets exchanged knowing glances. Their mother's tone indicated a desire for them to exit a situation becoming increasingly public. Destiny, always the most socially intuitive, nodded and guided her sisters away. Once they departed, Olivia turned to the small gathering of onlookers with a measured smile. "The summit has arranged an excellent program this year. I particularly recommend the neural interface demonstrations on the lower level." The gentle dismissal was effective. The crowd dispersed, though several continued recording as they moved away. Olivia had learned long ago that controlling a narrative required acknowledging rather than fighting inevitable exposure. Across the room, Jackson drained his scotch in a single swallow, wincing as the alcohol burned a path down his throat. The sensation was nothing compared to the acid realization corroding his carefully constructed self-image. For 12 years, he had rationalized his actions as necessary business decisions. Now, facing the living evidence of what he had discarded, those justifications crumbled like sandcastles against an incoming tide. Gathering what remained of his dignity, Jackson approached Olivia again as she concluded her photo session. "Please," he began, his voice lacking its usual confident resonance. "5 minutes, in private." Olivia regarded him with clinical detachment. "I've found that private conversations with you tend to end poorly for me, Jackson. I understand, but—" He glanced around nervously at potential observers. "There are things that shouldn't be discussed here, such as the fact that you abandoned me while pregnant with your children, or that you explicitly stated I lacked the refinement to succeed in your world." Her voice remained conversational, though her eyes had hardened to obsidian. "Perhaps you're concerned about the $2,000 you so generously provided to resolve the problem?" Each question landed with precision, striking vulnerable points in Jackson's facade. His complexion paled further as he realized she remembered his exact words. Cruel dismissals he had nearly forgotten, but that she had carried for 12 years. "Olivia," he whispered desperately, "I was wrong. I see that now. But these girls, they're my daughters too. Biologically, yes. In every way that matters, no." She straightened her designer blazer, the movement emphasizing the chasm between her current elegance and the desperate young woman he had discarded. "Fatherhood isn't determined by DNA, Jackson. It's built through midnight fevers, first steps, homework struggles, and daily sacrifices." A senior technology correspondent from the Wall Street Journal approached, recorder in hand. "Ms. Johnson, might I have a brief comment about the rumored government contracts for quantum-resistant encryption?" "Of course," Olivia replied smoothly, turning away from Jackson with practiced ease. "NeuroSync views quantum security as the next horizon in our adaptive protection ecosystem." Jackson stood awkwardly to the side, suddenly invisible, a sensation entirely foreign to a man accustomed to commanding attention. As more industry figures engaged Olivia in conversation, he retreated again, watching from a distance as she navigated the complex social dynamics with effortless authority. The triplets reappeared at their mother's side, each carrying digital tablets displaying notes from the technology demonstrations. Destiny, whom Jackson was beginning to identify by her more assertive posture, whispered something in Olivia's ear while glancing in his direction. "Absolutely not," he heard Olivia respond firmly. "That's not a conversation for tonight." Despite his better judgment, Jackson approached once more, intercepting the family as they moved toward the exit. "Olivia, please. The girls deserve to know who I am." His voice cracked slightly, the desperation now fully evident. All three girls turned toward him simultaneously, their identical expressions displaying various shades of curiosity and wariness. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. His eyes, his jawline, even certain mannerisms reflected back at him in triplicate. "We know exactly who you are, Mr. Reynolds," Maya stated, her analytical gaze assessing him like a complex equation. A man who calculated that a pregnant girlfriend and potential children represented insufficient return on investment. Jackson staggered slightly at hearing his cruel dismissal reframed through a child's precision. It wasn't. "Financial terms appear to be your preferred communication method," Zora interjected, her voice calmer but no less penetrating than her sister's. "So perhaps consider this. What's the net present value of 12 years of abandoned parental responsibility?" Olivia placed protective hands on her daughter's shoulders. "That's enough, girls. Mr. Reynolds and I have nothing further to discuss tonight." "Actually," Destiny spoke up, looking directly at Jackson, "I have one question." She paused, her expression unsettlingly mature for a 12-year-old. "When you told our mother she lacked refinement and pedigree, did you consider that you were making the same assessment about us? That your DNA wouldn't compensate for what you perceived as her inadequacies?" The question left Jackson speechless, his mouth opening and closing without producing sound. Around them, several conference attendees had stopped to witness the encounter, phones discreetly recording. "We should go," Olivia said quietly. "Our driver is waiting." As they turned to leave, Jackson made a final desperate attempt. "My company, Reynolds Enterprises. I could offer you positions, board seats, equity. The girls would be set for life." Olivia paused, turning back with an expression of genuine pity. "You still don't understand, do you? You can't buy your way into their lives any more than you could dismiss me from yours with $2,000. She gestured toward the convention center entrance. "Our driver is waiting. Good evening, Mr. Reynolds." As they departed, Jackson remained rooted in place, watching as 12 years of karmic debt collected interest before his eyes. The whispers around him grew more audible as attendees recognized the unfolding drama. That's Jackson Reynolds, the one who abandoned her when she was pregnant with triplets. Heard he told her she wasn't refined enough for his world. Now she's worth billions while his company is tanking. The next morning dawned with merciless clarity. Jackson awoke in his hotel suite to the incessant buzzing of his phone, dozens of missed calls, hundreds of text notifications, and an email inbox overflowing with urgent messages. Groggily, he reached for the device, only to freeze at the headline displayed on his screen. "Tech Titan's Secret Shame. Reynolds abandoned Johnson and unborn triplets before her rise to power." Below the headline was a still image from the previous night. Jackson's shocked expression as he faced Olivia and the triplets, the girls' identical features clearly displaying his genetic contribution. With trembling fingers, he opened the article, scanning the detailed account of their confrontation. Someone had not only filmed the entire exchange but had apparently conducted rapid background research, outlining the timeline of their relationship and subsequent separation. The piece included quotes from former Reynolds Enterprises employees who recalled his relationship with a brilliant MIT programmer whom he had abruptly separated from shortly before his company's IPO. Jackson's phone rang again, his board chairman. He let it go to voicemail, unable to formulate any explanation that wouldn't sound as monstrous as the truth. Within minutes, his email chimed with a calendar invitation. "Emergency board meeting. Status of CEO position, 3 p.m. today." Another notification appeared. A text from his fiancée, Caroline Winthrop, heiress to a Chicago banking fortune and his ticket to financial salvation through her family connections. "Return the ring to my attorney. My family will not be associated with this disgrace." Panic rising, Jackson scrolled through his notifications. 2 potential investors had already canceled their meetings. a women's rights organization had announced a boycott of Reynolds Enterprises products. His personal social media accounts were flooded with outraged comments. Desperate for damage control, Jackson threw on clothes and rushed downstairs to the Four Seasons lobby, determined to find Olivia before she left Chicago. He approached the reception desk with forced composure. "I need to speak with Olivia Johnson immediately. It's urgent." The concierge's expression remained professionally neutral. "I'm afraid Miss Johnson's party has requested privacy, sir." "Listen, this is an emergency. Just call up to her room." "Mr. Reynolds." A deep voice interrupted him. Jackson turned to find a tall man in a dark suit, the NeuroSync security logo visible on his lapel pin. "Ms. Johnson anticipated you might appear this morning." "I need to speak with her," Jackson insisted, desperation evident in his voice. "They're my daughters, for God's sake." The security chief maintained his impassive expression. "Ms. Johnson has left instructions for you." He extended a sealed envelope. "She asked that this be delivered if you appeared." Jackson tore open the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a formal legal document signed by Olivia, officially waiving any past, present, or future financial claims related to paternity, along with a handwritten note. "Jackson, not everything can be evaluated in terms of investment and return. Some things are simply priceless, like time. You chose not to invest time in our daughters when they needed it most. Now, that lost time is an asset that even your money cannot buy back. The girls know everything about you, that you chose your career and public image over them, that you considered us an investment without adequate return. It was my choice to tell them the truth without rancor, just facts. They will process this information and eventually form their own opinions. If they ever wish to know you, I won't stand in their way. Until then, respect their space as you should have respected our dignity 12 years ago. Olivia." Jackson collapsed into a lobby chair, the letter clutched in his hand. On his phone, notifications continued to accumulate. His board calling an emergency meeting, shareholders expressing concern about the public relations disaster, tabloids requesting comments on his abandoned daughters. 3 days later, Bloomberg Businessweek published a detailed analysis titled "The Cost of Abandonment: How Jackson Reynolds Lost the Investment of the Century." The article clinically calculated the potential value of shares he would have held had he remained with Olivia and invested in NeuroSync's early stages, approximately $1.7 billion. In his Lake Forest mansion, as he watched his career disintegrate, Jackson received notification that his fiancée had canceled their fall wedding. Her family, conservative and traditional, could not tolerate the scandal of a man who had abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and 3 unborn daughters. While Jackson faced the consequences of his past decisions, in Palo Alto, Olivia conducted a NeuroSync board meeting to discuss acquiring a promising biotechnology startup. After the meeting, she found her daughters in the company's research laboratory, where they spent summer days as interns, already learning the business they would someday inherit. "Are you all right?" she asked carefully, studying their expressions. "After everything that happened in Chicago?" Destiny shrugged, her directness unchanged by recent events. "We're processing. It's strange finally meeting him after hearing about him for so long." Maya, analyzing data on her tablet, added with characteristic precision, "Considering the psychological and social variables involved, your decision to keep us away from him appears to have been statistically favorable for our development." Zora, always the most emotional of the three, looked up from her project. "Do you think he'll try to contact us again?" "Probably," Olivia answered honestly, "and if someday you want to know him better, that will be your decision, not mine." 2 weeks later, a voluminous package arrived addressed to the girls. Inside were 3 identical letters from Jackson, pleading for a chance to know them, along with legal documents promising them shares in his company and properties. Destiny laughed openly. "He really thinks he can buy us?" Maya examined the documents with clinical interest. "Fascinating how he quantifies relationships in financial terms, a consistent behavioral pattern." Zora, after reading her letter silently, looked at her mother. He says he made the biggest mistake of his life, that he understands now what he lost. Olivia embraced her 3 daughters. Some lessons come too late, others exactly when they should. The morning sun cast long shadows across Chicago's downtown skyline as Jackson Reynolds stared blankly at his phone. The screen displayed yet another devastating headline. Ex-boyfriend who abandoned pregnant Olivia Johnson attempts reconciliation at TechVision Summit. His notifications had been relentless since dawn. Emails from board members, texts from business associates, and voicemails from his publicist, all demanding explanations he couldn't provide. He dragged himself from bed, wincing at his reflection in the hotel mirror. The confident executive who had arrived in Chicago 3 days earlier had vanished, replaced by a haggard man with bloodshot eyes and rumpled clothes. As he splashed cold water on his face, his phone rang again, the 4th call from his board chairman in the past hour. "Your silence is unacceptable, Jackson," the chairman barked when he finally answered. "The board is convening an emergency meeting at 3. Your presence is required, not requested." "I can explain," Jackson began, though he had no idea what explanation could possibly suffice. "Save it. The damage control team is already working, but frankly, abandoning a pregnant woman who became the most successful tech CEO of her generation isn't something we can spin." The line went dead. With trembling hands, Jackson checked his other messages. His fiancée Caroline's text was brutally concise. "The engagement is over. My father's attorney will contact you regarding the ring. My family's name cannot be associated with this scandal." Caroline Winthrop represented his last chance at financial salvation. Her family's banking connections would have provided the capital injection Reynolds Enterprises desperately needed. Now that door had slammed shut along with every other avenue of escape. Desperate and disoriented, Jackson threw on yesterday's shirt and took the elevator down to the Four Seasons lobby. He needed to find Olivia, to explain, to negotiate, to reclaim some control over the narrative unraveling around him. "I need to speak with Olivia Johnson immediately," he demanded at the reception desk, trying to project authority despite his disheveled appearance. The concierge regarded him with professional detachment. "I'm afraid I can't disturb our guests without prior authorization, sir. It's an emergency, a personal matter." "Ms. Johnson's party has requested privacy protocols," the concierge replied, his expression revealing nothing. "Jackson Reynolds." A deep voice interrupted from behind. Jackson turned to find a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit, the small NeuroSync security insignia visible on his lapel. "I'm Craig Daniels, head of executive security for NeuroSync Technologies." "I need to see Olivia," Jackson insisted, abandoning all pretense of composure. "Ms. Johnson anticipated your visit," the security chief responded, his tone neither hostile nor sympathetic. "She asked me to provide you with this if you appeared." He extended a sealed envelope with the NeuroSync logo embossed in silver. Jackson tore it open in the middle of the lobby, caring nothing for appearances now. Inside was a formal legal document with Olivia's signature at the bottom, officially waiving any paternity-related financial claims past, present, or future. Attached was a handwritten note on heavyweight stationery. Jackson's eyes darted across Olivia's elegant handwriting. "Jackson, not everything can be evaluated in terms of investment and return. Some things are simply inestimable, like time. You chose not to invest time in our daughters when they needed it most. Now, that lost time is an asset that even your money cannot buy back. The girls know everything about you, that you chose your career and public image over them, that you considered us an investment without adequate return. It was my choice to tell them the truth without rancor, just facts. They will process this information and eventually form their own opinions. If they ever wish to know you, I won't stand in their way. Until then, respect their space as you should have respected our dignity 12 years ago. Olivia." Jackson collapsed onto a nearby lobby chair, the letter crushed in his fist. His phone vibrated continuously in his pocket, each notification another nail in the coffin of his career and reputation. Across the lobby, business travelers glanced his way, some with recognition dawning in their eyes. The man from the viral video, the executive who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend only to discover 12 years later that she had built an empire while raising his children. "Would you like me to call someone for you, sir?" the security chief asked, his professional demeanor intact despite the uncomfortable scene. "They're my daughters," Jackson whispered, more to himself than to the man standing before him. "She can't just keep them from me." "Ms. Johnson has made her position clear," Craig replied. "The young ladies will make their own decisions when they're ready." Jackson looked up, sudden desperation in his eyes. "Are they still here? In the hotel?" "Ms. Johnson and her daughters departed for Palo Alto 3 hours ago. Their jet left O'Hare at 7:15 this morning." The security chief's tone indicated the conversation was concluded. 3 days later, the Bloomberg Businessweek landing on Jackson's doorstep delivered the final blow to his fractured ego. The cover displayed a split image, Olivia and the triplets on one side, Jackson alone on the other, with the headline, "The Cost of Abandonment: How Jackson Reynolds Lost the Investment of the Century." The article clinically calculated the potential value of shares he would have held had he remained with Olivia and invested in NeuroSync's early stages, approximately $1.7 billion. The writer had interviewed venture capitalists who had rejected Olivia initially, only to watch in dismay as her company's valuations skyrocketed. Each quoted statement was another reminder of Jackson's catastrophic misjudgment. In pure investment terms, the article concluded, Reynolds' decision to abandon Johnson and their unborn children represents perhaps the most costly personal and financial miscalculation in recent business history. That afternoon, sitting alone in his Lake Forest mansion, Jackson received the final indignity, an email from Caroline's family attorney requesting the return of the 3-carat engagement ring and informing him that the Winthrop family was severing all business connections with Reynolds Enterprises. The emergency board meeting that followed was mercifully brief but devastating. Jackson maintained his title as CEO only by the slimmest margin, with several board members openly questioning his judgment and the negative publicity's impact on their already struggling company. "Fix this," the chairman had demanded, "or the next vote won't go your way." While Jackson's world collapsed around him, 3,000 miles away in Palo Alto, Olivia conducted a NeuroSync board meeting with characteristic poise and precision. The acquisition of Biomatrix, a promising biotechnology startup specializing in medical data security, proceeded smoothly under her direction. "The integration teams are ready," her chief strategy officer reported. "We can announce the acquisition next quarter once regulatory approval is secured." After the meeting, Olivia found her daughters in the company's advanced research laboratory, where they spent summer days as interns, already learning the business they would someday inherit. Maya analyzed algorithm performance metrics on a large monitor while Zora calibrated a prototype sensor array. Destiny documented their work with professional-grade video equipment, her natural talent for storytelling evident in her careful framing of each shot. "Are you all right?" Olivia asked softly, studying their expressions, "after everything that happened in Chicago." Destiny lowered her camera, her directness unchanged by recent events. "We're processing. It's strange finally meeting him after hearing about him for so long." Maya, still focused on her data analysis, added with characteristic precision, "Considering the psychological and social variables involved, your decision to keep us away from him appears to have been statistically favorable for our development." Zora, always the most emotionally perceptive of the three, looked up from her prototype. "Do you think he'll try to contact us again?" "Probably," Olivia answered honestly. "And if someday you want to know him better, that will be your decision, not mine." The girls exchanged glances, communicating in their private triplet language before returning to their projects. Olivia watched them with quiet pride, marveling at their resilience and maturity. They had processed the revelation of their father's identity with remarkable composure, asking thoughtful questions rather than displaying the emotional turmoil such discovery might have caused. 2 weeks later, a voluminous package arrived at the Johnson household addressed to Destiny, Maya, and Zora Reynolds. Olivia noted the presumptuous use of Jackson's surname but delivered the package to her daughters without comment. Inside were 3 identical letters from Jackson, each pleading for a chance to know them, along with legal documents promising shares in Reynolds Enterprises, property deeds, and trust fund arrangements, a desperate attempt to buy the relationship he had previously discarded. Destiny laughed openly as she scanned the documents. "He really thinks he can buy us? After 12 years of nothing?" Maya examined the legal papers with clinical interest. Fascinating how he quantifies relationships in financial terms, a consistent behavioral pattern that aligns with his original rejection paradigm. Zora, after reading her letter silently, looked at her mother with troubled eyes. "He says he made the biggest mistake of his life, that he understands now what he lost." Olivia embraced her 3 daughters, the embrace conveying what words could not, that their worth had never been in question in her eyes, regardless of Jackson's belated recognition. "Some lessons come too late," she said softly. "Others, exactly when they should." 6 months later, as summer turned to autumn, Reynolds Enterprises filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection after failing to secure essential investment capital. The same day, NeuroSync announced the groundbreaking for its new research campus in Chicago, a cutting-edge facility to be constructed on the exact city block where, 12 years earlier, Olivia had been evicted to the sidewalk with her suitcases. At the groundbreaking ceremony, Olivia stood flanked by her daughters, now 13 and growing more confident daily. As she cut the ceremonial ribbon, cameras flashed and reporters called out questions. "Ms. Johnson," asked a journalist from the Chicago Tribune, "why choose Chicago for this expansion considering your difficult memories of this city?" Olivia smiled, looking at her 3 daughters, each holding a ceremonial shovel for the first symbolic dig. "Because sometimes you need to return to the point where everything began to realize how far you've come. This city no longer represents pain for me. It represents transformation." That evening, as their private jet soared above the Chicago skyline returning to Palo Alto, Destiny asked the question that had lingered since their encounter with Jackson. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he had stayed with us?" Olivia gazed out at the lights of the city diminishing below. "Sometimes. But then I think about everything we've built together, and I realize that the universe has a strange way of correcting paths. He did me an immense favor by leaving our lives." "How so?" Zora questioned. "Because he freed me to discover my true value," Olivia answered, holding the hands of her 3 daughters, "and gave me the 3 greatest treasures anyone could desire." Meanwhile, in a small rented apartment in Chicago, Jackson Reynolds watched the news coverage of the NeuroSync groundbreaking through his window, drinking alone, finally confronting the truth that Olivia had understood 12 years earlier. That true value was never found in bank account numbers, but in the courage to build something lasting from nothing. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.